Hey everybody, this is Ed from the Whiskey Tangent Podcast here with another Whiskey Short. Joining me as always is Scott.
Hey everybody.
And we're going to do one of our classic quick tastes, which this time comes to us as a request or an offer. Yes, right?
Solicitation?
A solicitation?
Yeah.
Scott, tell the people.
All right. Aaron from Robro Marketing, our buddy who sends us all the whiskey,
Ruh-roh.
reached out, ironically, after we had just announced the whiskey on one of our news episodes.
Yeah.
And this is the Chicken Cock Island Rooster Rye Quick Taste. Whiskey Short.
So, you know, I have to go chicken cock rye right out of the get-go for...
Gecko.
Right out of the get-go. I don't know.
There's lizards and insurance. What is happening?
Right from the start. Let's get this out. So,
you're like Porky Pig.
I know. Like,
son of a gun.
So yeah, Chicken Cock Rye is a really interesting history that I'm going to go through. Most of this from their actual website. So here we go. In 1856, James A. Miller established a distillery in Paris, Kentucky, and began making whiskey he called Chicken Cock. Unfortunately, he died just a few years later, leaving the business to a trusted distillery clerk named George G. White. With some help from a few investing partners during the 1860s, George was eventually able to mash up to 400 bushels of grain per day and fill 9,000 barrels per year. In 1880, he changed the name of the distillery to the G.G. White Distillery and renamed the spirit to be the Old J.A. Miller Chicken Cock as an homage to his former boss. Over the ensuing decade, the company's mashing capacity increased from 400 to 600 bushels of grain per day, and 6 rick houses were added, capable of storing 32,000 barrels each.
wow.
But of course, just as with many, many other distilleries and brands, Chicken Cock's rapid turn of the 20th century ascent wouldn't last long, owing to the looming specter of...
Dun, dun, dun.
Prohibition. And indeed, the distillery ceased operations in 1920. Interestingly, though, Distillers Corporation Limited of Montreal, Canada, which was basically the parent company of Seagram's at the time, bought the brand and began producing Chicken Cock outside of the United States. Eventually, bootleggers would smuggle the whiskey back into the country, where it became a staple of speakeasies in the Northeast, particularly Harlem's famous Cotton Club. As the great Jazz Age composer Duke Ellington was quoted as saying, "During the Prohibition period, you could always buy good whiskey from somebody in the Cotton Club. They used to have what they called Chicken Cock. It was a bottle in a can, and the can was sealed. It cost something like $10 to $14 a pint."
Wow. There's a lot of money back then.
Which in today's money is $140 for a pint. And you think today's prices are crazy.
All right. They must be selling it at Mount Vernon.
Anyway, towards the end of Prohibition, the brand was brought back to America by national distillers, and Chicken Cock was thereafter made medicinally. Unfortunately, despite major advertising efforts being made in the decades after Prohibition, the brand struggled to return to its pre-Prohibition glory days, and in 1950, a distillery fire halted the production of the original Chicken Cock whiskey for good.
I mean, who gives distilleries fire insurance anymore? Like, I feel like it has to be so high, but you got to have it, I guess.
However, about a decade ago, spirits entrepreneur Marty Antilla came across the Chicken Cock brand while doing research on the history of bourbon and decided it was worthy of a resurrection. So he began buying up bourbon, discovered a treasure trove of original packaging and promotional materials, and enlisted the help of master distiller Greg Snyder to help achieve his goal under his new company, Grain and Barrel Spirits. Today, in partnership with the Bardstown Bourbon Company, Marty and Greg produce 1,200 barrels of whiskey a year, which primarily consists of their 2 core expressions, a bourbon and a rye, but also special yearly limited editions. And that's what we have here tonight, the Island Rooster Rye. So this is a rum-finished rye. We're big fans of rum-finished ryes around here. The proof is 95. The mash bill is a 95.5, finished in Caribbean rum casks. This is not, however, an MGP 95.5 rye.
No.
This is done by the Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Correct.
The price is MSRP $200.
Yes,
So
it's definitely...
not for the faint of wallet.
Yeah, I mean, it's an elite spirit.
Yeah.
It was created to be such. And I don't think they make any apologies about that.
No,
They're like, it's like apologizing for making Porsches. Like, well, you don't buy a Porsche, then buy a Honda Civic. They're red. They go fast.
I feel like you're calling me out on that one. I have a red Honda Civic, thanks.
And he hates the color, which is why.
I fucking hate the color. I'm so dumb.
He was too impatient to wait the 10 days to get one shipped in. So.
Yeah, I really wanted the blue, but yeah, we have samples that they sent us that we're going to taste.
Right
on the nose. I mean, you can definitely smell the rye on the nose of this.
Yeah, I mean, the rye and the oak is there. I got some, like a vanilla shortbread.
Okay. Yeah, there's
like
definitely
a cakey vanilla, like not a creme brulee or something, but
sure.
something.
There's definitely brown sugar on this.
Oh my God, from the rum finish, it's all over it.
Yeah, because brown sugar is just sugar with molasses in it.
A little citrus orange, candied orange, so to speak, if that makes sense.
That's a really nice nose. Taste it.
Wow, I just did. It's really good. It's very sweet. Can we agree it's a sweet rye?
It is, but I get a lot of
pep,
spice in
a lot of
this.
spice.
So everybody knows that we love the Angel's Envy rye, but the criticism of that is that it's too sweet. There's too much rum on it. It's almost a rye finished rum than a rum finished rye. And this one, you do not lose the rye flavor of their whiskey.
No, but it is sweet. For me, it's almost like the finish is Grand Marnier.
Oh, wow.
It's so
You're
sweet.
tasting a lot of orange on this.
I really am. I'm trying to get away from it, but
I feel like orange is your go-to and cherry is mine.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
At least recently
there's
it has
no
been.
cherry on this.
No, there's no cherry on this one.
So right now, I've had a couple of big sips. I'm getting like the pepper in the back of the throat.
It's all over my tongue.
There's like
oaky.
Yeah,
It's sort of an oaky, dry rye grain finish. Maybe a little bit of like tobacco.
yeah, they're a little bit of an earthy tone.
Yeah. Mid palate. What do you think?
The palate itself is rye, caramel, maybe a dash of cinnamon. This is for people that are looking like, I've drank 1,000 whiskeys. What's out there that's new that I haven't tried that is different or is worth treating myself for a promotion or a holiday? And I'd say this is right there, Scott. What do you think?
This is really good. As you leave it on your tongue and you don't have it for like a minute or two, the spiciness really just like it invades your whole mouth, and it's almost like. And I compared another whiskey to this, the Clove Necco Wafer, that sort of clovey, anisey, spicy, like slightly sweet thing, and that's what I'm getting now. It's a terrific whiskey.
And it's funny. So we pre-gamed with Grain and Barrel Spirits Elvis Rye, which we had done a short on earlier.
Yeah.
Just because we had to drink something and we figured same company.
Right.
And once again, we realized how really nice and delicious this was for being like, a $45 bottle, for example.
Right.
In case you think this company only throws out lots of expensive whiskey. No, they have different levels. This is just their elite premium brand.
Yeah, and the chicken cock, their core expressions are pretty reasonable. I think they're around $40,
right,
maybe $50.
We decided to treat ourselves, and Aaron decided to treat us, I guess.
They treated us.
But see, when you do the Elvis whiskeys, you get nice stuff down the road. So, and the Elvis whiskeys were actually really good.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, every time I sip it, I taste something different.
Yeah.
It's layers to it, like a 7-bean dip. You know what I mean? Like what do they call like a a 7-level dip?
7-level, whatever it's called.
I can't fucking remember. God damn it! Get stutter and prick over here all day. I've been stuttering like a
You're a little slow today.
Get it out.
Son of a gun.
Wake up.
Thanks. I needed that.
Right. Had to be done. All right. So we're going to talk to Greg right now. We're going to set up the Zoom call.
Right. Yes.
And then we'll come back and wrap it up.
Absolutely. So we're going to have Greg on, Master Distiller, for Grain and Barrel Spirits.
All right. Be right back.
Hey, Greg.
How you doing, guys?
Good. I'm Ed. That's Scott.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Ed. How are you guys?
Doing great, man. Doing great. It's funny. We just announced your new release right before we got reached out to because, chicken cock is a fun name to say. I mean, nothing else, so.
Yeah, a lot of people have fun with it, no doubt.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So, Scott, just want to let him give us a background or?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us and sending us the samples that we have. Start off talking about you, your background, how you got into whiskey, number one, and how you got with chicken cock.
First and foremost, thanks for letting me be on your podcast today, guys. I always look forward to these. And a little bit about me. I'm into my 45th year in this industry now.
Wow.
It all came about, right out of college, actually. I have a business degree from Indiana University. And in your senior year, they post in the career placement interviews, different companies that are looking for new management help and so forth. And one of the interviews I had was with Joseph E. Seagerman's son. They had a plant in Louisville, Kentucky back in the late 70s. And so I interviewed and was hired as a frontline supervisor. And it was a great company to work for. If you picked up things quick and you wanted to learn and were aggressive, they gave you an opportunity. And I was kind of put on a fast track. And within the 5 years that facility was open, I virtually got to work in every department, from the distillery dryer house to the barrel warehouse, filling barrels, putting barrels in ricks, taking barrels out of ricks, dumping barrels, gauging tanks, filtering, blending, processing, receiving, bottling, shipping, quality, maintenance, you name it. And so that kind of set the stage for my career. From day one, I loved it. But when they shut the facility down, I had an opportunity to relocate. And eventually I was going to end up in New York City at the corporate offices within about 9 to 12 months. And living in New York City at that time was not on my priority list. And so I opted for the severance package, and they would pay for my education for 1 year. Luckily, Bellarmine University in Louisville, they have a 2-year MBA program. And I kind of pleaded a little bit, and they felt sorry for me, I guess. So they let me get my MBA in a year's time, and Seagram paid for every penny of it. And shortly thereafter, went to work for Brown-Forman for a total of a little over 12 years in various capacities. I started out as their bottling manager on the afternoon shift, did that for a little over a year. Then I got a promotion, was responsible for all the dry goods, the bottles, the boxes, the labels. And then after doing that for about 9 months, they added to my responsibilities all the wet goods, all the tank trucks coming from Collinwood, Canada, Holland Canadian Mist to be bottled in Louisville, drink trucks coming up from Pepe Lopez tequila.
Did you get to bottle any good liquor back then? They're both terrible.
Yeah, well, there was, I will tell you this. I was a Old Forester drinker. So back then it was 86 proof and they had the bonded, it was only 2 offerings they had. Then later on, when Brown-Forman acquired LeBroy and Graham and they came out with Woodford Reserve, day one, they filled that first barrel. Guess what that Woodford Reserve was? 7.5-year-old Old Forester.
Wow.
So, yeah. And even today, I think they're still putting some of the Old Forester in there to blend it out. And that's another story. I could go off on a tangent on that. But
yeah, well, Woodford Reserve was my origin story. It's the first whiskey that wasn't Jack Daniels or Jim Beam that I cultivated a taste for. So Woodford always will have a special place for me. We love Old Forester.
And both of them are excellent bourbons. But once I did that, I got a promotion as director of operations out to the cooperage. So people thought I was crazy leaving downtown, the bottling operation, to go out to the cooperage. It's like you step back a century in time. It was hot, it was smoky, it was dirty and noisy. And I said, you know what? It's a part of the learning process. The barrel is an extremely important element of making a high quality whiskey. Anyhow, I managed that operation for a little over 9 years. And then I left Brown-Forman and went to work as the vice president of Austin Nichols and a managing director of Wild Turkey. Did that for a little over 10 years. Lawrenceburg, Kentucky holds a special place in my heart, as does Jimmy Russell. Jimmy worked for me during that time period, and there's no finer person. These are truly the last of the true master distillers that grew up with corn dust under their fingernails.
I was going to say, you were there when they started to put out some really interesting expressions. That was a very dynamic time period for Wild Turkey.
Absolutely was. As a matter of fact, most people don't know this, but in 1998, I created Russell's Reserve.
Wow.
People think Jimmy and Eddie did, but it was funny because Pernod Ricard owned at the time. One of the first things they asked me, said, take a look at our inventory. We think we've got too much whiskey. And so I've got basically an Excel spreadsheet that takes into factor of the age of the whiskey, what the expected yield should be, different variables that you have to figure in to see how much whiskey you've got and then match it up with the sales needs for that particular year. Anyhow, I did that and basically came back and told them, said, you know what? You don't have too much whiskey, but you got too much old whiskey. And I flat told him, I said, you got to bite the bullet, guys. Number one, blend it off, not in such high percentages that it's going to change the taste profile, but you're going to have to start using it up. And you've got so much of it, it's going to take time. Number two, you can try to sell aged whiskey on the open market. But in 1998, nobody was buying aged whiskey on the open market, not like it is today. And I said, the third option is we can come out with a new bourbon brand. And they looked at each other. I had finance and marketing group. The CEO of the company was there. And they said, that's a great idea. Well, what would we call it? I said, for lack of a better term, why don't we call it Russell's Reserve? And I said, it's high time this company paid tribute to one of the greatest master distillers that ever walked this earth. And that's Jimmy Russell. And Jimmy didn't know anything about this. So next Monday, I was back in Lawrenceburg. And that morning, as I did most mornings, I'd connect with Jimmy first thing. I said, Jimmy, as I recall, we got some great 10-year-old bourbon sitting up on the 4th floor of B Warehouse. So you mind grabbing a sample of that? And let's try that today. So, yeah, no problem. So later on that day, I hear this knock on the door and door opens and Jimmy sticks his head in and says, you got a minute? I said, yeah, come on in. So he brings in this little snifter glass and he says, here's that sample you wanted to try. And so I got it about a foot from my nose and the caramel and vanilla about knocked my head off. I could not believe the aroma coming out of that glass. And Jimmy just grinned at me, smiled, and said, nodded, that's pretty good whiskey. And I said, yes, sir.
Well, it's a great story, man. And we love Russell Reserves, and we've never drank one that we didn't like. Some of them are,
was it the single barrel one we tried? That was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, very proud of it. Very fortunate again to be in a situation that I've been very blessed to work with some great people and become friends with so many as well.
What was Jimmy's reaction when he found out you named it after him?
So to finish that story, basically, we had kind of a little presentation in that. And, you got to know Jimmy. He's such a true Kentucky gentleman, but he shed a couple tears over it. I was pretty proud about it. To this day, God bless him. His health's not doing great right now, but he's still a trooper and one hell of a gentleman.
Awesome. So how'd you get involved with Chicken Cock?
So from Wild Turkey, I left up and went up to Maine, actually, for 3 years. I worked for a company called White Rock Distilleries. And when I was up there, the big brand that we had was Pinnacle Vodka.
Oh, Pinnacle.
Yeah. And so we actually created the dessert category of flavored vodka.
Oh.
So, I was actually on the innovation team when we came up with Pinnacle Whipped. I don't know if you've ever tried Pinnacle Whipped. It's whipped cream flavored vodka.
I actually have. It was so novel. I saw it at a party one time. I said, I got to see what this tastes like.
Yeah.
It smells and tastes like whipped cream. I mean, it's phenomenal. But anyhow, in 2012, Jim Beam acquired Pinnacle Vodka and a small rum brand in the plant assets. And they asked me to move back to Kentucky and head up the transition. So my wife and I moved back and took a little over a year to complete that transition. But from there, I left and went to work for a company down in Bowling Green, Kentucky called Western Spirits. Bird Dog Whiskeys, Calumet Farm Bourbon, Sam Houston Bourbon. That's some of their brands. It's a privately owned company. And I was VP of operations for them for about 3.5 years. I was living and working in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And then on weekends, I'd drive back home. It's about a 2-hour drive to southern Indiana where I live and just a little bit too far to commute every day. So it just got to be more and more difficult. So that's when I decided to ramp up my retirement plan. And that was not retire, but start my own consulting company. And so in June of 2017, I believe it was, a little over 5 years ago, I started consulting. And Grain and Barrel Spirits is one of the first companies I actually picked up as a client. They needed some help with some supply chain stuff and some operational issues. And so they hired my services. And one day the founder, Marty Antela, shared his vision of wanting to resurrect the brand back to Kentucky. It's an old brand originated in 1856 in Paris, Kentucky, but the story burnt down in the 1950s. And so the brand just sat idle for just about 60 years. In 2011, Marty, the founder of Grain and Barrel, he ran across the history and he was able to acquire the brand rights. And like most small companies, he needed cash flow. They don't own their own distillery. They don't own any operational assets, but he needed cash flow. And so the easiest way to do that, he was able to acquire some young 6-month-old whiskey. He flavored it with various flavors and he bottled it in an aluminum bottle, and it served his purpose. It created cash flow, but it didn't help the quality reputation that Chicken Cock once had many years ago. And so when I started consulting for him, he asked if I could serve in the role of master distiller. And I said, Marty, I'll do that on one condition. You quit buying this young crap and let's truly focus on bringing the brand back to its high quality prominence. And so he agreed. And that's what I've been working on for the last 5 years.
Oh, that's awesome. Because one of my questions was between when he had the idea to restart the brand in 2011 until 2017, when you did your first limited release, there's a 6-year gap there. What happened? And you just kind of answered it.
Yeah, again, it's a very common business plan with small companies. You got to have cash flow to get on your feet. And, with this bourbon boom, wanting to get in the industry. And it's kind of one of the reasons I decided to start consulting is that they got to realize, number one, it takes a fair amount of money. Number two, you got to have patience.
Yeah.
If you really want to have a good quality whiskey, you got to give it time.
So is he transparent about, because you guys source, right?
Actually, here's how it works out. One of the first things I did as master distiller, I worked out an agreement with Bardstown Bourbon Company. And so one of the things that's unique about Bardstown Bourbon, they have a collaborative distillation program where I have oversight over everything. In other words, I gave them the mash bills for a bourbon and a rye. I gave them all the work instructions, as far as the time and temperatures I want to cook the grains, the enzymes I want to use, all the specifications for fermentation, beer chemistry, and distillation. And then when they make our whiskey, I go down and oversee the process to make sure they're following those work instructions right. And they kind of let me cherry pick too where I want to age my barrels in the warehouse.
Oh.
To take that a step further and something unique that Chicken Cock is doing that I'm not aware of anybody else in the industry that's capable or is doing it. One of my first clients when I started my consulting was another group out in West Virginia. In these Appalachian Mountains, we got all kinds of white oak and their trees are getting cut and they're getting shipped overseas. And, we need to cut them and make barrels and keep them right here in the U.S. And so I did a market feasibility study for them that showed that by 2019, the demand for new barrels was going to exceed the available supply. And that happened. So I helped these guys build a stave mill. I went out and trained their employees how to cut staves and heading, how to edge them up, how to stack them so you get good airflow. And then when they got the cooperage built, which I helped design, I went out and helped train their employees how to build barrels. And so through that relationship for chicken cock, I go out a year in advance and I personally select the logs that we're going to use to cut into staves and heading, and we're going to let them natural air dry for 10 to 12 months. And then I go back and they bring that wood in and I oversee the production of the barrels. We have a specification of a medium plus toast. And then later on in the process, I'm going to char a number 3 level char, not a number 4. I just created a bunch of great flavor through the toasting process. The last thing I want to do is burn it away. And so, anyhow, I have oversight, bark to barrel to bourbon to bottle, all the way through it. I don't know anybody else that's doing that in the industry.
It sounds like that Chicken Cock was lucky to have somebody with your knowledge and connections to get their whiskey off the ground.
Especially just listening to you talk about it, it's more than just making whiskey. It's making barrels and making bottles and getting it to people and the whole distribution and logistics of the whole process that a lot of people, drinkers, don't really pay attention to. They don't even go back to the history. So it's really striking, your experience.
And it is. It's a great opportunity for me to take my years of experience and knowledge and truly focus it on a brand and pay attention to the details.
And just to have Jimmy Russell work for you, I never pictured Jimmy Russell working for anybody. I just pictured him like sitting in a cabin somewhere making whiskey. I never thought that he actually had to go to meetings and stuff.
But yeah, Jimmy's wonderful.
So I guess we should talk about the whiskey that we have. So tell us a little bit about Island Rooster. How old was the rye before it went into the rum barrels?
Okay, so the rye is actually 4 years old rye. It was rye that we actually produced at Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Okay.
Every year, Grain and Barrel does a couple of LTOs, we call them, limited time offerings. They're very small volume. And last year, I was chatting with Monty. I said, I really like the spicy, peppery notes of our rye whiskey. I think it's fantastic. But I said, I think if we want to do an LTO by enhancing those flavors with a little bit of sweetness, I think it'd be a big hit. He agreed. And so we bought 25 rum barrels and put our rye in those. And I would check it every month because I know too many companies that have probably overdone it. The last thing you want to do when you finish a whiskey in a secondary barrel, you don't want that secondary barrel to overpower the base whiskey flavor. You just want to enhance it a little bit. And so after 6 months of sitting in those barrels, I said, boom, that's it. We need to dump it now. We reduced the bottle proof, which is 95 proof, which I also worked at creating. Typically, I'll start at barrel proof and work my way down. But for this one, I wanted to work my way up. I tried it at 86 proof, didn't have enough flavor. Tried it at 90 proof, not enough flavor. 92, nope. 93, nope. But 95, that's when the flavor really comes through on the profile. And you just got to be careful you don't over dilute it. And that's what I try to do with all of our brands is hit the right sweet spot where you lower that alcohol burn just enough to allow those flavors to overtake the profile.
And let's be honest, you wanted to have as many bottles as possible. So where was the sweet spot between proof, right?
Yeah, it depends on the whiskey. Everyone's different. Every barrel's going to be different. So
yeah, the rum finishing can be too sweet. And you said other companies, and I'm wondering if you're casting a little bit of shade on Angels of Rye.
I'm not throwing stones at anybody, Scott. No, sir. No, sir.
But my question was, and you answered it, how did you decide where to stop and when to stop? And that's just a fascinating process to me. And the fact that you went from low to high instead of high to low. Well, really
again, back to Ed's comment, the almighty dollar runs the business, right? Mm-hmm. And so, some of the top management, they're trying to get more cases per barrel. And I respect that. But again, if we're truly focused and dedicated to bringing this brand back to its high quality prominence, almighty dollar's got to give a little bit to really reach that quality sometimes.
Yeah, so one of the things what I saw in some of the reviews that I had read of this whiskey was the price point. It's a little high, perhaps out of the reach of bourbon sipping consumers.
I hear both sides of that equation. And again, I've been in this business a long time, and it's what the market will bear. It's not for everybody. Right. There's no question. It's not for everybody. We've had renditions that are far more expensive than that.
But I guess your point is, for the marketing guys, if you want this to be 200, it's got to be a good whiskey. What bothers us is if someone takes the chicken cock and I see it on the store for $3.99, and I know you're not getting any of that money. Right. And the liquor store is just gouging us because you can't get a bottle anywhere in New Jersey, and they got one, which we see with Buffalo Trace, right? Any of the Wellers up here, the full proof, the 107, they'll be over $300. They're not worth that. I've paid $75 for Antique 107 3 years ago. Now it's $3.99. It didn't get that much better.
Yeah. You should have tasted back in the 1990s. It was awesome.
I was going to say, when you were at Seagram's making Seagram 7, it was delicious back in the
believe it or not, the facility in Louisville, Kentucky, we bottled Eagle Rares, 101 proof. It was in the short bottle in the box back
I remember
then.
that. Yeah.
Benchmark was such a good quality bourbon back then. So we had some great bourbons available.
Yeah. Anything else, Scott? I think, Greg, you've been so informative.
Yeah, just a clarification. How long was it in the rum barrels?
So it was 6 months. Now, I will tell you this. First go around, out of those 25 barrels, we got a little over 1,000 six-pack cases. And that's not a lot to spread around. I think we're in 42 different states now. So some states got it, some states didn't.
Yeah.
However, there was so much flavor left in those rum barrels. I refilled them with some more rye. And so we have a second round that just came out, just was bottled here a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Oh, wow.
And it was in the barrels a little bit longer to get comparable sweetness, about an additional month, about 7 months. And I'm telling you, I've done a little bit of traveling the last 2 months, doing promotional market visits. And as soon as it hits, it's sold out within 3 or 4 days. It's phenomenal. At the $200 price.
It won't last. It won't last.
Right.
I'm sure. If you ever come to New Jersey or Philly, look us up. We'll show you a good time.
I absolutely would. Back at you. I mean, if you can come down this way, Louisville or the Bardstown area.
We're planning to take a trip this summer. We still might do it in August.
Let me know. Yeah, if I'm in town, I'd love to kind of give you the VIP tour of the distillery and kind of let you taste some of the stuff we got aged in barrels. So love to do it.
Awesome.
All right. We'll tell Aaron to text us like a contact number on you. All right.
Okay. We'll do.
Aaron's always very protective. It's like you guys are like A-listers. Like we can't get a hold of anybody. It's like, I have Greg's number. Just tell me what you want. I'll tell Greg.
Not a problem. We'll do.
All right, man. Have a great rest of your day. Stay cool.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
All right, Greg.
Later.
Wow, that was an awesome interview.
I mean, wow is a great word for that. We've had so many good guests over the years, but I don't know that we've had anybody with the pedigree of Greg Snyder. His experience level, not just with different companies doing great work,
right?
But the
things he did,
the different jobs he's held. I mean, somebody who has an A to Z level of experience in the whiskey industry. I mean, if I could talk to somebody like, go out to dinner and have a night with someone, I think Greg would be a blast to hear the stories he must have. And it's great that he took some time out to talk to us about his newest creation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he worked for Seagram's, Brown-Forman, Wild Turkey, Jim Beam for just a year doing the transition, and then started his own consulting business.
Not to mention, in the interim, he invented dessert vodkas.
Right.
We didn't mention.
He created Russell's Reserve.
Right. I mean,
Jimmy Russell worked for him.
Right. Seriously. Like, if you're in that industry, him is what I'm saying. Like he's probably, I mean, if there's 25 guys in the whiskey industry in the country, Greg Snyder's one of them. And, and I hope we can do something with him down the road, because I feel like we could never run out of things to talk to Greg Snyder about.
Seriously. And the little tidbit he just dropped in there, that Woodford Reserve was originally 7.5-year-old Forester.
Right.
It just blew my mind.
Right. I mean, he says, I could tell you so many stories. I'm like, I don't doubt that at all, Greg.
No, not at all.
So if you're looking for something different, something that's delicious, if you got a whiskey buddy who you always try to top to show him the new thing, there's 6,000 to 12,000 bottles of the Island Rooster Rye by Chicken Cock Whiskey.
Yeah, and if you like rum-finished ryes and you don't want one that the rum character is overwhelming the rye, this is the one for you.
But yet, not overpowering. Like, it actually does enhance the whiskey. Doesn't overpower like some of the cheaper ones.
Exactly.
All right, so for the Whiskey Tangent Podcast, thanks again, Greg Snyder, for coming on. I'm Ed.
I'm Scott.
Cheers, everybody.
Later.